Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. Hope you guys been enjoying the content on the channel as of late. Welcome back to another box office recap. And of course, welcome to 2026. We are in a brand new year, and hopefully your New Year's was good. Mine was pretty just chill. It was a rainy day outside, so there wasn't much to do. I don't normally do anything on this occasion anyway, I just sit at home. But I just got done uh, combing through everything that was from December, doing all the numbers and crunching the numbers and stuff like that. And we are now ready to cap off the year in terms of these videos of looking back on December and seeing how things had gone there in the box office. Now, we got a couple videos down the pipe that I'll also be doing regarding the year. We're not completely done financially when it comes to 2025, at least talking in that front. I do have one video or two planned. And then, of course, we have videos to talk about in regards to just the year itself, how I felt personally in terms of content, and then about this year and about what is to come and my anticipations there. But before we get into all that, let's talk about December and see financially where things stacked up. So let's get into it. So before we get into it, as I always do with each one of these videos, I like to give you guys a little bit of an overview of how I like to measure the box office. So as you can see from here, I usually break this down very specifically. So when we're looking at production, I usually look at a 2x ratio, 2.5, or a 3x ratio based on the amount. So if it's like single digit, I'll do 2x, double digit 2.5, triple digit 3x. And I usually judge that on the higher margins of which those budgets, those kinds of productions need to hit. But bare minimum, typically I utilize a 2x ratio regardless of whatever the budget is. But those margins that you're seeing, I use those as the higher margins of which those films probably should be hitting in order to hit specific marks for studios and also financially to meet at certain thresholds to see certain returns on investments. I also include any publicly known marketing expenses or anything relating to that, either like reshoots or anything else. Then, if the information is not available, I usually just judge based on the production expenses alone or by what information is out there or what I can glean from the production itself. I also do take into consideration that the studios and theater chains usually have percentage cuts between the two because distribution is involved in this case. So there is percentage cuts that are usually involved in this. Usually 50% from the box office revenue. That number varies though based on markets, whether it's domestic or international. And I also judge the the amounts that may be needed from streaming if it does not perform well theatrically, and considering all that in terms of success or failure. So hopefully that's all. Hopefully that's all explained well. And yeah, so let's get into this. So this month was more or less the same in terms of where we have been going this year, or at least this past year. But let's just get into it. So the first of which that we're going to discuss is a film that I actually reviewed a few months back. Uh, Actually, a pretty good film, actually, in my opinion. That film is Hamnet. This is the Shakespeare film, and it's actually a good piece if you guys have not checked it out. But there was no disclosure of any production on this, so I'm just guessing based on what I saw. It was probably like maybe like 10 million, maybe even less than that. But this was distributed by Disney through their 20th Century brand. Uh, yeah, or no, this is from Universal. My apologies on that. This is from Universal. I don't know why I put Disney on there. This is from Universal. My apologies. Um, So, because it's from Focus Features, I just remembered. Um, but yeah. So Hamnet, I would guess maybe 10 million. So when you break that down, bare minimum, the film would need to do at least 20 million. Higher margins, at least 25 million. Theatrically speaking, it has grossed about $10.84 million. So when I did the math, when I broke it down, studio, in this case Universal, not Disney, just ignore that part. They've made about at least 5.41 million, or as high as 5.94 million. So again, we don't know anything regarding production, so we don't exactly know how much the film costs, so I can't say, if that gross is good. But as far as what I am considering, it's not particularly great. Um, and I think a lot of this stems just purely from a lack of marketing. I just don't think a lot of people, there was just a lot of marketing attached to this. There was a few things here and there. I think at least like this past week, I saw a few advertisements, but uh, wasn't really a strong push. And clearly did not attract a lot of people. So I think it's purely to do with a lack of marketing and just a lack of interest, if you ask me. And to follow from that, let's talk about Five Nights at Freddy's 2. Now, this might be more of the reason why Hamnet also fell short, because we had this film coming out the same weekend as that as well. Or at least it had an expanded release that weekend. But Five Nights at Freddy's 2, this had a budget of at least 36 million. So bare minimum, it would have to do at least 72 million. Higher margins of at least 90 million. Theatrical gross we saw earlier currently is sitting at $222.43 million. So when you break it down from the percentage cuts from certain markets and such, this film has done about 101.08 million, or as high as 107.14 million for Universal Pictures. So they are probably very happy with this, rightfully so, because film went off and did more than what was required, and even hit the higher margins, at least for what the studio themselves has made off the movie so far. So definitely expect a third one on the horizon, and very illustrative again of smaller budgets actually doing greater business in the box office, and less of a risk as a result. And we'll be talking about risk very soon here, but yeah, this this is. I mean, this was kind of expected too. The first film took off in a certain way, and given just the internet as they are, this film I think was going to attract a certain kind of audience, and it seems that it did. All right, next film we're going to look at is Fakamall. Uh, I actually did want to see this, but I never got around to checking it out. So yeah, I didn't. I just didn't get the time to check it out. Um, and it seems as though a lot of you didn't check it out either, because theatrically, it's only done about $2.71 million, and that is including the sales in the UK. Because this is like more leaning towards the UK audience, but it, clearly it didn't resonate, at least in the UK. No disclosure of any marketing, but given just like kind of the big production design, big production, with the big stuff, like the big because it's kind of riffing off Downton Abbey, so like the big utilizations of big fancy buildings and stuff like that. I would assume maybe like 50 million, but I could be wrong. Could be a little bit smaller than that. Could be like 20, 30 million. But I'm going to go off by 50 million. So bare minimum, the film would have to do at least 100 million. Higher margins of at least 125 million. I could be wrong on this. I honestly, it's probably lower. It might be even like 20 or 30 million. So by that, I would have to do at least 40 to 60 million in that regard. But regardless, it has not hit those margins or any close to that idea, any of that minimum, bare minimum. It has not hit any of those marks at all, because theatrically, like I said, 2.71 million is where we're looking at. And studio gross, once you break it down, in this case, the distributor being Bleecker Street, uh, they made about 1.18 million, or as high as 1.22 million off of this film. So yeah, this was quite a uh, quite a blow, quite a failure, and I think largely it's to do with a lack of marketing. I do not remember seeing any marketing for this outside of that one trailer. I don't know if there was any marketing at all in the UK. Clearly not really. At least it it doesn't appear so. I think also because of how it is, what it is, it literally is in some cases being that of a Monty Python type of deal, a very absurdist, type of comedy. I don't think that that attracts a lot of people. I think, in the realm of comedy, there's a very specific taste that people will come to, but something like this is rolling the dice, and at least in this case, they came up short. So again, lack of marketing, and I think a lack of interest in this regard. So moving on from that, next film we're going to check out is Ella McKay. Now, this is from Disney, not what I was talking about earlier, not Hamnet. That's not from Disney. This is actually from Disney. And yeah, uh, this was bad. Production, we're looking at least 35 million, and we don't know any marketing expenses, so 35 million is in consideration. So bare minimum, the film would have to have done at least 70 million, higher margins of 87.5 million. Theatrically speaking, it's done about $4.44 million. And when you break it down, Disney has made about so far 2.16 million, or as high as 2.36 million dollars. Um, yeah, this was really bad. So bad that I actually read that, and I don't know if it's true, that Disney actually has pulled this film from the international market, from international theaters. It's still playing here, I guess, but I guess in the international scene, not so much, which is kind of weird. You would think that they would want to keep it in the international market, but like maybe the sales are just that bad that it's just like there's no point to keeping it here in these theaters. So, um, but yeah, I think it's a lot to do with just. I think it's a lot to do with just the approach. You're talking about a film that I think even for me, seeing the trailer, it looked extremely dated. It was something that should have came out in the 90s, and it's ironic because it comes from a filmmaker who hasn't done something, as far as I can tell, from the 90s, or at least anything notable since the 90s. He hasn't been a directing wise for like, I think it was like what, like 20 years really, before he made this film. Now, I'm not saying a filmmaker can't come back after a long period of time and not make something great. It's just to say this wasn't one of those cases. Um, and it's just, again, what it is also, it's not a comedy with life. It's not something about, romance or some kind of like exaggerative, thing. It's a very just casual film. And I think that for audience members, they just wanted something more of a spice and not to something like this, so yeah. So it also, I heard some political undertones to this side that some people also were taking issue with. I guess I don't know. I read that somewhere, but yeah, definitely not the comeback story for this filmmaker. And another list to the Disney's pile of failures this year, and it's getting big. So yeah. So yeah, let's move on from that. The next film we'll talk about is Dust Bunny. This is a film that literally came and went. No marketing for this at all. This has Sigourney Weaver and Mads Mikkelsen in it, so I'm guessing it's a little bit more like somewhere around 15 million. I literally watched the trailer just to get an idea of the production, just to see how much it might cost, and I'm guessing around 15 million. So bare minimum, the film would have to have done at least 30 million. Higher margins, 37.5. Theatrically, it has not even made $1 million. It's made $901,067. $901,067, yeah. Studio wise, this case being Lionsgate, they have made about $418,285.80, or as high as $447,215.30 off of this film. I'm honestly surprised that it's still, I believe, still in theaters. Um, I'm genuinely surprised. I would have thought this was pulled because of just how poorly it's been doing. Um, so yeah, it again further illustrating why Lionsgate might be bought out soon by another company because they have just had so many duds and so many failures. So so this just adds to the pile of that. And there was just literally no marketing for this. Literally, absolutely no marketing for this. So, and it's very of its own accord, at least by the trailer. What I saw, it's not a film that is, you know, kind of mainstream in its effect. It has its own style. It has its own parameters. It's, has this kind of gothic, tone to it. Um, so it just didn't have marketing, and again, a lack of interest. But really, in this regard, it's just a huge lack of marketing that worked against it. All right, next film we're going to look at is Avatar Fire and Ash. So, this was, of course, the biggest film that came out this month, obviously, by just the production alone. And we did a whole video on this talking about where I think this film needs to hit, and this will give you a little bit more of an understanding as to why I'm saying that I think this movie has to become one of the highest grossing films of all time in order to justify its investment. So budget wise, we're looking at 350 million. I saw some reports saying it's 400 million, but others say 350. So I'm going to go by the smaller amount just to show, just to say bare minimum, literally where this film needs to be in order to be successful. So 350 million. Marketing costs were an additional 150 million. So investment overall, we're looking at 500 million dollars invested into this film. So bare minimum, the film will need to do at least $1 billion or as high as $1.5 billion in terms of the higher margins. Now, theatrically speaking, it has gone to do $851.69 million, which is not bad. I mean, that's nice, but when you consider what the studio has potentially made off this film so far, they have made Disney as maybe as low as 364.89 million or as high as 377 million dollars so far off of its release. Now, obviously, as we've talked about before, opening weekends are also a little bit swayed towards companies. These are just generalizations. It's not, I'm not saying that these are the exact numbers. It's just generalizations of where these studios have probably what kind of money they've made off these movies. So it might be a little bit higher, maybe as close to 400, maybe even 450 million. But regardless, this film has to do huge. This film has to be a $2 billion thing in order for the movie to see a return on investment to Disney. In order for them to make $1 billion off this movie, this film has to do double of what it has to make. So it has to be a $2 billion endeavor. Um, and I think at this point, I think we can say that this film might, in fact, be the last film because I sincerely doubt that we're going to see this reach the $2 billion mark. I think that it's going to probably get as high as maybe at this point, maybe 1.5 billion, but I don't think that we're going to get any closer to than that. But Avatar films are always about the long game, so I could be completely wrong. I've been wrong before with The Way of Water. I thought that film would flop, but it went off to become one of the highest grossing films of all time. So who knows? Maybe this becomes one of the highest grossing films of all time, and I'm completely wrong. But I just have this suspicion that it's not going to get that high, and I think that it's going to be framed as a success because people are not going to consider the percentage cuts that go into each of the markets that films enter. But really, it's not. And I honestly think this is probably the last of the Avatar films from James Cameron for a while, which I think is a good thing. Creatively, he needs to go off and do something else. Um, it's it's just a showcase of just too much being put on a film and also little time in between development of said film. There was literally a 2 or 3 year period from The Way of Water to this, whereas The Way of Water had about nearly 10 to 15 years between movies, for the first film and the second to build up interest. So, yeah, so there was things going against it. Also, critically, it's not as well received, so it's got things going against it. So I don't think that it's going to reach those higher marks, and unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be much of a success when it's all said and done. But I could be wrong. We'll just have to wait and see. We'll see how January unfolds, but I think that we're probably not. It's not going to be $2 billion. I think we can almost guarantee that at this point. So. But moving on from that, let's look at the next film, which is the SpongeBob movie. So I'm actually a little bit surprised about the SpongeBob movie because I told my brother this. I was really expecting this to be a trend. I was expecting for both Avatar and SpongeBob to kind of rejuvenate that whole Barbie Oppenheimer effect. I was thinking that this would be kind of that first real post Barbie Oppenheimer trend. I thought this was going to be it. Um, with both films kind of residing in the water, I thought that there would be kind of some bondage between the two. I thought people would be decked out in SpongeBob costumes and shit. And I'm not a TikTok dude. I don't have TikTok, but it's just like, I thought that that would be the vibe here. Clearly not, though, because SpongeBob movie so far has done about 63.90 million, and it has a production of nearly the same amount, about 64 million. So bare minimum, the film would have to do at least 128 million. Higher margins, at least 160 million. And studio wise, this one being Paramount, they've made about 29.36 million, or as high as 31.26 million dollars. So yeah, man, I thought this would be a trend, but it just wasn't, and it shows that people don't really care. And also in conjunction with a film like Avatar, it actually worked a lot against it. Um, so yeah, so I think that what Paramount was probably hoping SpongeBob would be in releasing on the same day as Avatar actually really worked against it in this case. So so yeah. I think that's really the reason for it. I think outside of that, I think it would have been probably a little bit better, done a little bit better, but I think it's really to do with release on this regard and uh, it backfiring as a result. All right, moving on. I believe this also came out the same weekend. Next one we're going to look at is The Housemaid, which yes also came out the same weekend as SpongeBob and Avatar. This is the Sydney Sweeney, Amanda Seyfried thriller when they're, I guess, Sydney Sweeney, the housemaid, and Amanda Seyfried's character might be insane, kind of crazy. Um, yeah, this is distributed through Lionsgate. This is has a $35 million production attached to it. So roughly, the film needed to do about 70 million. Higher margins of at least 87.5 million. Theatrically, so far, it's done about 70.28 million. So some of you guys might automatically think, "Oh, well, the film's done well." Not true, because remember, as we always say, as if you know, if you read into box office or know, about percentage cuts, you know again that the studio does not make all that money. They make a fraction of that money. Some of that money goes to the studio, while the rest goes back to the theaters. That's the whole point of distribution. Um, so really, Lionsgate so far, when you break down the math, as far as I see it, they've made about 33.52 million, or as high as 36.22 million dollars. So yeah, so in this case, a film like this would probably need to go off to do maybe about 100 million, or about maybe 120 million. It would have to get higher. It'd have to hit a triple digit range in order to see a true return on investment. I mean, look at, kind of in comparison, look at the Five Nights at Freddy movie, Five Nights at Freddy's 2. It has almost the exact same budget attached to it, and that went off and did 200 million, and you see it made about 100 million back for that studio. So so it would have to probably have done at least about 100 or so million in order to see a return on investment, and it's not going to get there at all. It's not that kind of film. Um, and it kind of ends the year for what was Sydney Sweeney. It was a bad year for her. I mean, if you've watched any of the videos, I mean, she's not had a great year. Christie opening, having one of the worst openings of all time. Her other films here and there. She had a film this year, Americana, which also flopped real hard. So it's not been a great year for her. Hopefully next year will be a little bit better for her. Because I never shit on actresses or actors, in that regard. I mean, I know there's controversy surrounding her, which in my opinion anyway, was just dumb. But hopefully a better year next year. But this year just was not her year. So, and moving on from that, we're gonna check out Is This Thing On? This is a film I do actually want to see, and I actually, from personally for me anyway, I actually do know the reason for why this film has been flopping and probably will end up flopping once it probably will be expanding out here in the next week or so. This is Bradley Cooper's next film, and I'm assuming, because there's no information out, I'm assuming at least 20 million, as far as I can tell, at least taking into account a talent and stuff like that. So about 20 million. So bare minimum, the film will need to do at least 40 million. Higher margins of at least maybe 50 million. Yeah, about 50 million. So theatrically speaking, it has done about $641,747. And studio-wise, this case being Disney again, under their 20th Century Studios brand, $320,873.50, or as high as $352,960.85. So yeah, this film has not been doing good, and I think purely the reason for it is because there's such a limited window. Even though it claims, as far as I can tell, to have had a wide release, this is not right currently having a limited run, at least in terms of like the standard, playing in like select few theaters. It supposedly has a rollout right now. It's just a lot of theaters, at least in my area, at least, are not collecting it yet. They've not yet have collected uh, this film, and not until I think like next week are they now starting to show showings. And I doubt that a film like this is going to really take off. I mean, even if it did expand out and it had like a large release a few weeks back, I don't think it was going to be that kind of film anyway. It's again very much of its I wouldn't say own accord, but it's just kind of in the case of Ellen McKay, very casual. It's not a film that is, that has a lot of spunk or has a lot of specifics to it. It's just, as far as I can tell, it's about a person who's a comedian who's having relationship troubles. So it's something made for a specific kind of audience, and it wasn't going to be something that blows up the box office or really makes the kind of money that it would need to make. So once again, adding to the pile of things that Disney has decided to invest into and are coming up short. All right, moving on from that, let's take a look at the next film, which is David. So this is Angel Studios. This is their big splash, their next big splash into the public eye. Their first big splash, of course, was being The Sound of Freedom, which came out a few years ago, which kind of I think launched that studio in a big way. David's kind of their next big gamble. This being more pricey gamble. Now it's $60.9 million. We don't have any marketing attached to it, so bare minimum, the film will need to do at least 121.8 million. Higher margins of at least 152.25 million. And theatrically speaking, did about $56.29 million. So Angel Studios, as far as I can tell, they've made about 28.13 million, or as high as $30.93 million. So, yeah, I don't think this was ever going to take off in a huge way. It's very much meant for a specific crowd, people who are deeply religious or people who, are curious in those sort of stories. Christian, based story, I think, right? It's a Christian. No, I don't think it's a Christian based story, um, but religiously motivated, and those sort of movies don't usually take off. They don't usually have large audiences to support it. Um, so yeah, so I think between the two animated features, also, I think that SpongeBob was going to win out just because SpongeBob is just more colorful and has more of a notability to it. This just doesn't have that sort of stuff going for it. So I'm not shocked at all. Some people were like surprised that it did that did an okay number at the box office opening weekend wise, but given the price that get attached to it, it it wasn't going to go any higher than where it probably is right now. So so there you have that. So moving on from that, let's check out the next film, which is Anaconda. So yeah, I don't know why they decided to do this. I don't know why. I think this may have been fueled a lot by Jack Black. I just have a weird suspicion this was probably more of his idea because, yeah, clearly the idea did not pay off. So, budget wise, we're looking at 45 million. No marketing attached, or at least any publicly no marketing expenses. Bare minimum, the film would need to do at least 90 million. As a result, we're just considering 45 million. Higher margins of at least 112.5 million. Theatrically, at least in this case, Sony. Uh, Theatrically, it's 49.57 million so far. Studio wise, Sony, they've made about 22.78 million or as high as $24.26 million. So yeah, this is a flop. Um, I don't know why they decided to do this. I think that they were hoping maybe to replicate the the spirit of what Jumanji was, the Welcome to the Jungle, that specific cast. I think that was probably the idea behind it, but I think that the whole meta nature of it, I think, kind of worked against it, basically marketing it as a movie within a movie and, you know, also such just a throwaway thing from the 90s. I mean, I know that it became something of like I know that like we probably have made Anaconda what it was because I don't think even people of the time when Anaconda came out are talking about that movie. So I think it's more of us and probably it's just the studio seeing that and going, "Oh, I guess there's an interest for this," But there wasn't. I mean, clearly there wasn't. Um, so yeah, it's also just a weird premise, to take on. It seems convoluted. I don't know. I just don't think that there ever was an audience for this. So I think it was just a poor judgment on what the discussion of this film was. I think it was more of just a meme, more of just like, hey, look at this weird thing that came out back in the day. Not something that people really seriously want to see more of. So I really think they probably wanted to do. They were hoping for this to take off, kind of like Jumanji, but Jumanji and Anaconda did not have the same audience. The difference between the two that people know Jumanji, not a whole lot of people know about Anaconda, or probably wish to care about what Anaconda was. All right, I believe we're coming down to the wire here. We got two more films to talk about. So, first of which we're going to look at is Sung Song Blue. Song Sung Blue. My bad. Song Sung Blue. This is the biopic starring Hugh Jackman and Kate Hudson, and this is distributed through Universal Pictures. Uh, Budget-wise, we're looking at 30 million. No marketing expenses. So bare minimum, the film will need to do about at least 60 million. Higher margins of at least 75 million. Theatrically, it has done about $15.56 million. So studio-wise, once you break down the math, Universal has potentially made about 7.7 million or as high as $8.43 million off this film. So yeah, another flop here. I'm not shocked at all. This wasn't really going to take off. I don't think anyone was really going to care. It didn't really have a whole lot of life to it. I mean, it seemed like um, it seemed like it had some fair resonance based on the trailer. It seemed like it was going to be potentially, emotionally satisfying, but it again just doesn't have. It's also like story wise, like who we're centering on. It just seems like I don't. Is this artist? Is he famous? Like, is this specific singer famous? I feel like it's just me. I'm totally just going blind on this judgment, but it seems like a singer who had a one hit, like a one hit wonder type deal. Is that who this guy is? Like, just let me know. Maybe he is maybe very famous, and I don't know. But I'm not familiar a lot with music, so please just if I'm wrong, let me know. But clearly, whoever they are doing this biopic on, and clearly whatever because there was some marketing for this, not a whole lot, but a little bit. Clearly, whoever this is, it didn't resonate, and people just did not give a shit to watch it. Um, so yeah, so I just think whatever the subject matter is, and probably a little bit of a lack of marketing and a lack of interest, I think all of that contributed to just where we're at with this. So. And finally, to round out 2025 as a whole and this month, we have Marty Supreme. So this is the Timothy Chalamet. I believe it's a biopic, right? I believe it is. Timothy Chalamet led biopic in what is A24's biggest gamble yet, with a $70 million price tag. This has we don't know any marketing expenses attached to it. I know there's a little bit of marketing because I've seen some advertisements here and there. Bare minimum, the film will need to do about $140 million. Higher margins of at least $175 million. Theatrical gross so far, $38.60 million. So yeah. So A24, once you break down the math, they've made about at least 19.09 million or as high as $20.91 million. So yeah, so that gamble has not paid off. I don't see I I could see where that money probably went to because of the production design, a lot of the setting. They're probably put a lot of money towards that. Yeah, I just don't think that Chalamet works only in specific, in terms of a selling point. He's he works better in mainstream materials like in like the Dune series, and I don't know if Wonka was really that much of a success, but it generated a certain amount of money. He works in the wheelhouse of Hollywood when he's out here doing stuff like this. It clearly doesn't resonate, and it just kind of demonstrates also that he is not star material. He's just a face for specific kinds of work. So, yeah. So, and also a lot of that attitude that was taking place during the press junket clearly also didn't pay off as well. I know people were saying stupid stuff like, "Oh, he was being method during the press junket." It's like, no, I think he was just being a prick, as far as I can tell. um, Probably just excusing himself in some. I think he was trying to excuse himself. I swear I saw an interview saying that he was trying to excuse himself. But whatever the case is, it did not pay off. Whatever amount of buzz was attached to this, it attached to this. I heard it's got decent reception, but whatever the case may be, I think purely to do with a lack of interest in this regard. Just like the gamble that A24 took in this case was not particularly the best one. So, if you're counting at home, that was about 13 films that we had talked about today. And when we consider the successes to the failures, yeah, yeah, man, this year ended on quite The Whimper. This was a pretty bad month. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 was pretty much the only thing that's really done well. We'll wait and see where Avatar: Fire and Ash ends up, but yeah, dude. Even if Avatar: Fire and Ash ends up doing all right, which I have my doubts still, this was still a bad month. Largely to do with movies that were, excuse me, not going to gain a lot of traction. Some films I'm just surprised by. I'm just surprised by SpongeBob. I actually thought that would do something of a trend, but it just didn't. Releasing against this just really killed the momentum for it more than give it life. But a lot of content here that is original based content, and it just demonstrates a lot of what and also remakes to shit that people don't give a fuck about, and also you know centering on figures that people don't know about and betting on that people in the movies that they are starring in have star power to them, and they don't. Stars don't exist anymore. They just don't. Stars just don't exist. So what exists more today is notability within the IP, and you know clearly people are just not as interested in specific kind of films as they are with other kinds of movies. So, so hopefully, a lesson that we bring into 2026 and beyond that, we'll see. But as for the year itself, overall, I've revamped my list on the successes with the failures now. When you look at 2025, it is without a doubt a pretty rough year. Yeah, man, this was a rough year. This was a very, very rough year for films. Um, yeah, yeah. Now, if you watch my videos, if you go back and watch these box office recaps from this year, you will see that my opinions change over time. So a lot of these successes that you see over here have been reevaluated because I had not considered the ticket sales up until like halfway through the year, I think. So I started reconsidering it, started thinking more about percentage cuts, and I started realizing that wow, there's actually a lot more failures than I had thought. My kitty just got scared. I'm so sorry, baby. Sorry, baby. You okay? Um, but but yeah, it's been a rough year. It's been a very very rough year for everybody, namely some companies that we'll get into in the next video. Um, People like Disney, especially, just they've had it rough. But we'll get into all that in the next video where we talk about, case by case. Specifically, we're going to talk about, because just to round out the box office, we're going to talk about the fall season, and then we're going to talk about the general year as it stands, and then we'll get into 2026, seeing how things will go here from there. But yeah, dude, it's been a rough year. It's not been a good year for anybody. And hopefully next year will prove to be a better year. There's potential, and we'll look into it. But I have my doubts, man. I do. I think that next year is probably next year might show to be another rough year, but all in due time. So so hopefully we'll see some lessons learned from what is, in my opinion, one of the worst years that cinema has had in a long time, or at least in the 2020s. It definitely stands out as potentially the worst of half of the decade so far. I would have to consider 2023 maybe as the competitor on that front, but going by my gut, I feel like 2025 was probably worse. But that is 2025, and that is December. Yeah, rough year, man. Rough year. I had optimism. If you watch my videos, I had optimism, and then that optimism just started fading and fading, and yeah, man. It's not been a great year. So hopefully next year, that this at least now it is this next year. Hopefully this year will be a better year, but we'll have to wait on that. So, you guys, what are your thoughts about the box office from December? Your guys' overall thoughts about 2025? Do you guys thought it was a good year or a bad year for film? How was just 2025 generally for you? I mean, if you're okay with talking about it, it was an all right year for me. It was, yeah, it was all right. It wasn't great or bad. It was just okay. But let me know your thoughts relating to 2025 last year. I really need to get to bed. It's getting late, and I would like to eat something too. But let me know your thoughts relating to 2025, your anticipations for this year, 2026, in film. All things related in the comment section below. And that's gonna be it for this video, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. And until then, I'll catch you guys in the next video. And hopefully, you guys are having a safe and awesome Happy New Year. And hopefully, 2026 starts off on a good note for everybody. So, thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.